So, Arthur, good to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Lovely to reconnect again.
And on this occasion, I must personally wish you a happy birthday. and
Thank you. 3 years to half a century.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a big one. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
Yeah. In cricket, we would say you 48 not out.
Okay. Lovely. Lovely.
Sort of look forward to many, many more, I hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Arthur, I want to pick up on, in the book that you wrote, and that's, I suppose, a point of reference for anyone working in Ugandan civil society, and basically civil society in similar contexts, right, in Africa and around the world. But in that book, Arthur, you and your co-editor sort of argue that if civil society is to help citizens sort of shape, control their destinies, the leaders must spell out how they believe change and substantive change, I suppose fundamental change can happen, and how you can relearn the value of solidarity and collective action, rather than get caught up in, the obsession with logos and brands and so on. Now, I think that's an important statement because often we become protective of the brands and we forget about the reason and for whom we exist as organizations. Right? Now, you've always spoken about the power of solidarity in social justice movements, and I'm focusing on the word power of solidarity, not just the act itself, but what it does. In a world where inequalities are deepening and crises are increasing, and also becoming interconnected, right? How do you define solidarity in today's world, not just as a concept, but as a lived practice, Arthur? And what does meaningful, transformative solidarity mean?
Yeah. Really, it's very interesting that you get an extract from this book that I co-edited with John DeConnick, one of my mentors, lovely guy. Originally from Belgium, but then he settled in Uganda, and is pretty much Ugandan in many ways. So, solidarity is so important, especially in our world today. It has been in the past and today as well. And I will share with you my thoughts, but also maybe some practical examples about both action as well as impact of these actions, like you rightly say. So for me, solidarity is a meaningful expression of love and care for people who need it. And this is always connected to our common humanity. So when we express love and care for others and their circumstances, it's because we are bound together as human beings. So I will just share with you 2 actions that I just took to demonstrate what solidarity means in practice. And it was only a few years later that I realized how important these actions were. So in 2018, I was privileged as part of my orientation, having taken up a role of Federation Development Director, and of course, being responsible for many countries beyond Africa. We paid a visit to our work in Guatemala. And in one of the high, maximum security prisons in Guatemala was a gentleman that worked very closely with ActionAid Guatemala in a particular province where we worked, defending land rights for women and communities. Because of his work, he was arrested because he was seen as the pillar that was mobilizing, organizing resistance in Guatemala, and put in prison. By the time I visited him with colleagues from ActionAid, he had been there maybe 2 years and counting. The process of getting to visit him. I'd never, gone into a prison with that level of security. You present your passport, they have to stamp. It was like you get a visa to enter this, enter this particular prison. And when we met him, he was part of the indigenous community. So it was the first time I was seeing this individual, and the glow in his face of someone far away from Africa, not part of the Guatemalan society, not looking like him. He was so touched by this gesture, which was organized by ActionAid Guatemala. And you could see light. And when he had a chance to speak to me, he just explained to us how important the visit was and how he misses his family and how his resolve is not broken because of the circumstances he finds himself in that particular prison, and that if he had a chance to move out, thanks to visits such as we made, he would continue with the struggle. This, for me, was very moving. I didn't anticipate that a visit organized as a series of activities that we do in Guatemala would have such an impact. Secondly, a few years back, again in my position as interim Secretary General, our country director in Ethiopia was arrested and incarcerated for 30 days. And I went to visit her. Again, in this time not a maximum security prison, but in circumstances where she was incarcerated in a room slightly bigger than this office, with 30 other women congested in the same place. This was a number of weeks after she was arrested. So I took the trouble simply to go and visit her and say we care, and to go and visit her family in Ethiopia. So I had visited the family as well. And to see Tinebeb smile in the context in which I found her was just the most precious thing I could imagine. And it's perhaps one of the most memorable things I would have if I left ActionAid, those two visits. Now, the real meaning of this was expressed to me in 2022, a couple of years after all these events had happened. And so the country director of ActionAid Guatemala at that time, Laura Atado, and Tinebeb were in a meeting in Bologna. Yeah. And they spoke about these two visits. I didn't expect them, we were just reflecting as country directors. But the meaning they attached to these two visits is what made me fully understand what it means to share solidarity. So it's about love, care, and expression that we make because of our common humanity. So this, for me, in simple terms, is what solidarity is.
Yeah. And I think, Arthur, that, in your case, visiting as a colleague, but representing an organization, if you like.
Absolutely.
So when you go there, you are carrying the solidarity of your constituency into that moment.
True.
So you're not just any visitor, right? Yeah. But the reason is political, if you like.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the power, if you like. And what people tend to remember is the feeling that you brought in at that moment, and that feeling is kind of immortalized.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And very true. And of course, I need to acknowledge the honor and the privilege I have as a leader in ActionAid to be able to do this, because I like to say that if there was one currency ActionAid trades in, it's solidarity. Yeah. This is the history of the organization, that some people in one part of the world care about circumstances of others elsewhere. This is the real building block. And you and I have spoken before about a really important concept that we have been discussing, which is about the central nervous system that helps each one of us feel the other's pain. I think this is central to the identity of the organization that I proudly associate with at the moment. And any opportunity that I have, I reaffirm how important it is to feel each other's pain and to give a smile to somebody else's face as a human being, beyond all the trappings we hold, position, organization. That's what life is, in our motto beings. This is what will be remembered, not grand things that we sometimes write about. It's just the meaningful connection with people.
And for those that you did visit, Tinebebe and I suppose the colleague that you spoke about in Guatemala, for them, part of the power of that action, is the fact that the walls that they were constrained in do not constrict, the power of their work and their movements.
And for them to say that, such gestures strengthens their spirit. Now, how can I write that? Like I can't write about. You just need to hear what the other says. They are resolved despite all the problems. They are resolved to continue with the struggle. This is the real value you get out of solidarity.
And no authority can imprison ideas, right?
Absolutely.
You can imprison a person, but not the ideas that they articulate. No, brilliant. So, Arthur, again, going on, sort of on that, you coming from Africa and visiting, a prisoner, an important political prisoner in Guatemala, from a global solidarity perspective, given the current context, that the power of international solidarity, the idea of horizontal solidarity, people-to-people solidarity, and ActionAid being an organization, in a sense, that is a kind of foundation, an organizer, if you like, a mobilizer of such solidarity. How can we ensure that those kinds of voices, the voices of ordinary people, if you like, are amplified in ways that, even we sometimes cannot imagine that somebody from Guatemala can connect with somebody in Ethiopia, for example, and we can see the kind of the interconnections, the central nervous system, that we can feel the pain of a person in Ethiopia, and we can do the same for somebody in Guatemala, or for that matter, in Myanmar or something. How do you see that happening at a practical level?
It's very, very important because solidarity and acts of solidarity, they don't happen in a vacuum. Okay? They happen because, these colleagues who are imprisoned were not imprisoned just because the government or somebody woke up one day and said they should be in prison. It's because they are fighting for a particular cause. So causes are the ones that bring us together. So the land rights struggle in Guatemala is what eventually got this colleague in prison. The strong voice that Tinebebe holds in the Ethiopian society, respecting her identity, celebrating her identity. Recently, she was, acknowledged, for the fearless, leadership she provides for women's rights and all of this. This is the reason that, she's attacked and challenged. So I think at a practical level, there is a context under which solidarity happens, which is causes that we stand for. So for as long as there are causes that connect us, there will always be solidarity. So that's why I say it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when there are indeed causes. And a lot of these causes are what makes ActionAid the organization that it is. That when we stand for the rights of women, when we stand for the rights of people who are deprived, when we stand for the struggles that many movements around the world at the front lines are driving, it connects us. in this spirit of solidarity. This is what gives us meaning. That's what gives us meaning.
And Arthur, I mean, maybe focusing more on, say, grassroots solidarity, right?
Yeah.
If I take, so the idea that we would want people in India, for example, to know and understand and appreciate the struggles of, somebody, from a community in Africa, right?
Yeah.
So knowing each other's struggles, I think, is important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why people are sort of struggling for a particular issue. Right?
Yeah.
In the context of us doing this, and I fully agree that one of the best ways when we connect people and causes, that can create the conditions for the kind of grassroots solidarity that you're looking at. Take what's happening to those who are taking action in solidarity with the Palestinian people, right? Look at what's happening in the U.S. People are getting imprisoned for standing out against the genocide. In Britain, you face people are getting fired from their jobs for taking pro-Palestinian. Same in Germany and so on.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? And what could be an appropriate response to these kind of draconian measures that states are instituting against those who are taking certain forms of solidarity?
You make a very important observation. And before I respond to this question, the countries you talk about, the US, the UK, countries that sometimes citizens in those countries take for granted the life they live under. We've been talking about shrinking civic and political space for a long time. And quite often when you look at the Civicus Monitor, there are some countries that are always on the list. And these that you have mentioned are a timely reminder that we cannot take anything for granted. It will just take an election of somebody and reversals start to happen. This means that solidarity is not just one-dimensional, that it's about people in one particular geography and not the other. We need to express our solidarity with the students who are being denied, with the students who are standing for the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause in the US. This is the moment for us to stand with them because their fight is our global fight together. Now, I think that back to this, idea of causes, you mentioned earlier in the framing of this particular conversation that we need to transcend, logos, brands, and just deal with what matters to us as human beings. This is very, very important, Gino. At the end of the day, it's not that I was in ActionAid. It's what did I do when I had the opportunity to lead an organization like this? How did I expend resources of this organization to drive not just change, but also to uplift people in need? I think that we occupy and move on from these organizations, but the struggles that we stand for are enduring. So what's happening around the world today requires even more solidarity. The question about what will drive, say, solidarity in the future is common causes. There are struggles around the world today that epitomize the larger crisis we face in society today. One is the Palestinian struggle. In ActionAid, in our last strategy implementation framework, we name a system that is responsible for a lot of the problems that we have in the world today. A colonial, patriarchal, racist, extractive system. Palestine epitomizes this problem. A settler colonial state is what we are seeing in that country. So if Palestinians are successful, it's a huge dent on this system.
Correct.
This is why we must be interested. So it doesn't matter, my people in my village in Uganda, they might not know where Palestine is, but the success of the Palestinian people will have such a ripple effect, even on Ugandans who might not know where that country is. The struggle we have for climate justice today, I was just reading yesterday some of the most unbelievable things happening in the US today. They are seeking to criminalize environmental organizations that were getting funding from the previous administration. Not just to stop their funding, but to criminalize it. Climate justice organizations. Now, how bad can this get? It tells us that the struggle for those organizations that are championing the climate justice cause because of the crisis that the human race is facing with regards to climate is one we should rally behind. We all have very many different struggles, but there are struggles that epitomize, our common humanity that we must concentrate on. So the climate one is another one. The struggle for women's rights, the rollback we are seeing around the world. The estimation we've had, many people have spoken about this statistic, that on the current state and reversals, it might take 300 years to achieve gender equality. Like, how can we be in such a situation today? So working for women's rights is not just an action aid priority. It's not just we are doing it because we like it, because it matters for humanity. So picking those kinds of struggles, concentrating with our allies in these places is so important. The conflicts we are seeing today in Sudan, in DRC, over resources, in Ukraine, with the expansionist agenda that we are seeing all over. If Ukrainians don't succeed, we will see how imperialism will be reborn in ways that would dramatically affect the DRC, will dramatically affect the struggles of people in Latin America. So we must ensure that we are part of a global peace movement that puts to an end these wars that we are seeing. So I think that people get connected from the grassroots to global level on causes. And I think we need to, celebrate each and every struggle, but from a global perspective, it is important to concentrate on certain struggles that really reflect and try to push back this system that is driving the world crazy today. So I think these are the choices we need to make.
How do you see the kind of, the emergence and the possibilities of building a truly global, coordinated kind of response from a social justice perspective? How do you think? I mean, not just Action Aid, but other organizations that are fighting for social justice. How do you think they could better organize themselves and collaborate?
It's a pivotal moment, Gino, in our world. And what is happening, if you reflect deeply on this, requires some significant rethinking of both strategy and tactics. So, first of all, civil society, and this is so important, civil society doesn't exist of itself. It's a product of a context. That's why you cannot speak about civil society in a very homogeneous way. The particular expressions of civil society in Uganda, in India, in South Africa, in the UK, in the US, in Australia, in whatever country, is going to have to be connected to a particular prevailing context in those countries. So civil society, number one, is a product of a context. Let's not lose that. That's why we cannot carry blueprints from one place to another.
Yes.
Because it really needs to be embedded in the reality. We are facing challenges in our world today that are tectonic in many ways. People with wealth, with money, are now controlling power as well. Their decisions have immense consequences for people who are not on the table. So, what would the future reimagination of civil society to confront today's challenges look like? This is an important question you're raising. To be honest with you, Gino, my own reflection is we should rethink the way we are organized. There is no time and no luxury to start thinking about how organizations survive. It's how causes we believe in can be sustained. You asked me for what can be done. I think that rising authoritarianism, fascism, all the things that we see wrong with our world did not come out of the blue. They have been building over a period of time. So when we see dictators or people with dictatorial tendencies elected, it reflects not just these individuals, but what is happening in society. Therefore, we who consider ourselves to be, fighting for the dignity of people, we need to reconnect with the society in the most dramatic ways that we have not thought about in the past. ActionAid's current strategy, Action for Global Justice, international strategy, Action for Global Justice, mentions very strongly that we should shift our orientation from just, engaging with governments, engaging with we talk about the three faces of power, okay? Visible, invisible, and hidden power. For a long time, many organizations, including ourselves, have been concentrating on the visible aspects of power. Unless the hidden, the election in the US has brought to the center the hidden power that quite often we have not been paying a lot of attention to. So when we say the states, governments are being captured in many parts of the world by certain interests, those interests are now becoming visible. So hidden and visible power today have converged in a more, open way than before. So what we are left with is also the need for us to reorganize ourselves and start community organizing to push back. There is no other way I see this. Confronting fascist regimes, we can speak about this in the open, in the media, in laws, in parliaments, but what is going to make a difference is how we organize at the grassroots and at community level so that we set the foundation that will make it very risky for these players that seem to be invincible now to rethink their own actions. So I would say that civil society and its discourse should be more about reconnecting with society, embedding us in the imagination of people and their struggles at community and grassroots level, and connecting this with all the things that we name and shame openly. So this for me is the future, that we align better with people's authentic struggles at community level, at grassroots level, and at national level, and less about our shrinking space.
Yeah.
We should expand space elsewhere.
Yeah.
And space working with people is the future. So I do not see how else we can remain relevant unless we connect in a meaningful way with society and what's happening in society. This is the orientation we must take. And an organization like ActionAid and many other organizations that identify the need to catalyze struggles, authentic struggles of people, are primed for this moment. Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely profound. So brilliantly articulated, Arthur. You remind me, the point about what we need to do is to rethink our organizing strategies. It reminds me of a time when I was a young organizer in South Africa. There was an adult educator from Philippines, Ed De La Torre. He says, if your organizing is confined to marches and demonstrations, he says, when that time for marches and demonstrations are constricted, he says people will turn to another force. Mm-hmm. Why? Because your message didn't sink in. Correct. And I think that really sort of emphasizes the point about going back and working with and working through the authentic struggles of people. Yeah. So the idea of grassroots is roots.
Yeah, absolutely.
The roots that you don't see, but that's that holds the the surface.
We must be very humble at this particular moment and admit that maybe many things we have been doing have not been that impactful.
Okay.
And so be humble enough to reconsider. And I think success is going to come without a doubt through people's authentic struggles.
I mean, that's well said, Arthur. And I hope anyone who's listening to that will spend a lot of time actually reflecting on that, because without the people, in Malawi they say a leader without, people behind them is merely taking a walk. So anyway,
true.
Maybe on that note we can. Thank you so much, Arthur.
Thank you.